Alright, hello everyone and welcome to AEW Discussion. I'm your host, AEW enthusiast, Turkey Doug. In today's episode, I'm going to be discussing Dynamite, February 16th episode, and this was an episode main evented of a TNT Championship match. It also continued to build to Revolution pay-per-view. We got another match added to the card and another participant in the face of the Revolution ladder match. And with that, we'll go ahead and get right into the action, starting with a CM Punk promo to open the show. And this is some great mic work here by Punk. He recalled the Piper and was it Organ reference, and then tied them to his own career, and then set the stage for what should be a bloody and violent encounter between him and MJF. The manner in which MJF went from bragging to anyone who would listen to now being utterly silent, unsure of what to say or how to react in the face of being one-upped by Punk, was some great character work and really puts over the gravity of the situation. So most likely should be another good match here. Second time AEW's done a dog collar match, so it's got a bit of a special feel to it. It's not an overdone gimmick, and perhaps most likely Punk will get his win back. Maratti versus Bryan Danielson, and Danielson has been performing at the height of his ability since he joined AEW. He's a master of the mat game, capable of not only working the mat game, but also getting the crowd riled up and stomping his opponent for extra measure. He can do it all and really has found himself playing the bad guy character. Maratti, on the other hand, was faced with the task of imagining his opponent move for move, and he did just that. He was great in his performance, and this amounted to the most important match of his career, and he should see increased opportunities as a result. Given the layout of the match and the intensity shown by Danielson, really Maratti lose nothing in defeat. He got a chance to perform, and he performed well. Continuing the intrigue with the story between Moxley and Danielson, that continued here, and it's the right call too, as there's definitely some mileage left in this story. Granted, I don't think AEW was ever going to forget about it, but there hadn't been a follow-up until this point. And interesting enough, Moxley gave Bryan Danielson an answer, just not the one he was looking for. And it makes me think that perhaps these two will go one-on-one at Revolution, where Danielson will at the very least win Moxley over. I don't know if he wins the match. He might win the match, but he might be able to win Moxley over as well too. He didn't say no. So that makes me think that, yeah, they're probably going to go one-on-one. We get the match, and then we get to see them work together and do some great things together. Face of the Revolution qualifier match, Wardell versus Max Caster, and Wardell's smashing the competition still has not gotten old. Here he was tested a bit more than he has been, and the use of the Acclaim to help enhance him is a good bit of booking in that it gets the audience to cheer him before his actual turn occurs. It's right out of the creative formula that helped Batista achieve main event status back in 2005, and Shawn Spears will inevitably be the one that gets it first. So, looking at this story, my best guess is that Wardlow, he gets into the ladder match, and now that he's in it, I think he's the odds-on favorite to win it. I think if he does win it, then expect MJF to have Wardlow hand over his title shot. Wardlow basically refuses, lays out Shawn Spears, and then goes on the warpath, takes out MJF, and then goes on to the TNT title match. That'd be my best guess for what happens with that one. Hangman Page promo. So, two issues with this segment here. One stands out a little bit more than the other. So, first, Cole calls out Page for abandoning his friends in the Dark Order, only for Dark Order to rush to his aid once Hangman found himself on the receiving end of the numbers game. Now, if you were trying to make a story out of Page not being there for his friends, really, then they shouldn't have come out. It would have sold the consequences of Page not being there for his friends by having Page instead fend for himself, with no sign of Dark Order as he gets beat down. But that is forgivable. However, what isn't forgivable is the insistence that Cole did not really lose that match to Orange Cassidy back at Beach Break just because it was an unsanctioned lights out match. Just because it's not on the official record does not mean it did not happen. It did happen. You did lose that match, and given that Cassidy hasn't done nothing of note since then, it really has to make one wonder, what was the point of Cole even losing in the first place? He's just going to continue to insist he didn't lose because it wasn't officially on his record, and then Cassidy also hasn't really done anything of note to follow that up, so Cole really probably should have just won that match. Interesting choice though for AEW as they start Cole's run to the top, his first world title program, especially since it seems it wants to quickly heat him up in time for the Revolution pay-per-view. I still feel like it's too early for Cole versus Page. I really do, but it's gonna be a good match though. But I still feel like it's too early for this kind of match with these kind of stakes, that being the world title on the line. Inner Circle implodes. Santana and Ortiz versus Chris Jericho and Jake Hager. Now, the strength of this match, besides the solid in-ring action, was the intrigue it created with the story being told. Now, make no mistake about it, this match didn't really resolve or solve anything. The issues within the Inner Circle are now worse than they were before, and now that Kingston is back, expect more gasoline to be added to the fire. And, take into consideration too the effect that this will probably have on Sammy Guevara, who decided last week he was no longer going to be content to be distracted by the issues within the Inner Circle. So it'll be interesting to see if this is in fact the end of the most dominant faction in AEW history. Most likely it is, but we got Chris Jericho going face to face with Eddie Kingston. That one's gonna get physical in a hurry, because that's just how Kingston is. And that's going to be a fun segment right there. But I think, this is, in fact, the end of the Inner Circle, which is a shame. It always does suck when a faction has to break up like this. But, every faction, every tag team at some point, most of them do have an expiration date. And for the Inner Circle, given that, Guevara's been branching out on his own and having success, it's understandable, that this faction kind of breaks off on their own. But I would also argue that you don't always need to have the members in the faction turn on each other to end a faction or a tag team. They could always go their separate ways and then come right back to each other. But when you go the route of them turning on each other and fighting each other, then it kind of makes it hard to do that whole thing of them coming back together at any point in time. No disqualification match. Thunder Rosa versus Mercedes Martinez. And a great match between these two women here. They really took the no disqualification stipulation and certainly made the most of it. Especially that German suplex, man. That was a wicked bump from that Thunder Rosa took right there. The finish was clever in that it played on the introduction of chairs and the post-match sign of respect set these two up, Rosa and Martinez, to be reluctant partners against Baker and Hager. There was that sign of, I think, they realized that, hey, we might not be friends coming out of this, but we had this great match, we respect each other now, and even though we don't, like each other, we're gonna have to learn to get along to take out these two. So the end game appears to be Rosa versus Baker for the AEW Women's World Title, and the presumption is that Rosa beats the Good Doctor for the title, and given how long Baker's reign has been, how well established she has been as champion, I think, it's time for a switch. Revolution, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD versus Thunder Rosa for the AEW World Title, Women's Title, and let's get Rosa a title run. She has been over since she first came to AEW, and given the history between the two, that is a booking direction that makes sense, and certainly something fans can get behind. And in a TNT Championship match, Sammy Guevara versus Darby Allin. And Guevara and Allin have wrestled on big stages before, in better matches, but this is still an ultra-competitive main event that set the stage for a potential triple threat match over the title, also involving Andrade. El Idolo was in danger of falling into mid-card obscurity. Any momentum he had following his arrival in the company was slipping away. The partnership with Matt Hardy and the Hardy Family Office, not the most thrilling storyline development, but it does get him on TV. And more importantly, now he's in contention for a championship, and it looks like we might get a triple threat match pitting Helen, Guevara, and El Idolo for the upcoming Revolution pay-per-view. that at least that at least appears where things are heading. And hey, I am all for that match. It's a way to get Allen his rematch for the title and not have it be another Guevara versus Allen match. And it also gets Andrade in the match as well too. I think he's overdue for a title. I think really it's a good spot for him to be. He is due for a title match, and I would even say a title run. I guess we'll have to see what does Tony Khan want to do. Does he want to make Andrade champion now, or does he want to do it later? I would argue now, make the triple threat match happen at WrestleMania, put the title on Andrade and see what happens. And with that will conclude this episode of AEW Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.